So this morning, I would like to talk about two different lights. Within our parsha, we have two different lights that are discussed. The first, at the very beginning of BeHalotkha, is the light of the menorah, the light of the seven-branched candelabra that was in the tabernacle in the Mishkan, that was lit, prepared each day. A new one was lit. We have a more stylized version of it over here, I think. I don't think that's exactly what it looked like, but it's close, right? That's the idea behind it. And then, as we look a little bit further, we go to page, if you want to look in the Chumash, it's page 821, in Numbers chapter 9, verse 15. On the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the pact, and in the evening it rested over the tabernacle in the likeness of fire until morning. So we have this pillar of fire that was there over the tabernacle in the evening, and the menorah, those two lights. And I want to ask the question and start to think about, since both of them are in this week's parsha, what's the difference between them and why do we need both? Isn't one of them enough? Right? Isn't one of them enough? So why might we need both, and what's the difference? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Jeff? Excellent. So I think on a very straightforward level, I think you're right on, right? The menorah is fire that is created by human beings. We have to prepare the oil, prepare the wicks, do all of that, light, make sure that it's lit every single day, make sure that the flame is going the way that it's supposed to. It is absolutely a ma'aseh b'nei adam. It's an act of human beings, whereas the pillar of fire is a ma'aseh shamayim. It is an act of God. Okay, so why do we need both? Yeah. So maybe the fact that we've got two different places to look to see that light, that flame of God, that may be better for us, right? It may be more, and maybe once isn't enough. Jack. Okay. Yes. For sure. So Jack is arguing one was temporary, one was permanent. Ironically, right, or maybe not ironically, we can get to that, the light made by human beings was the permanent one, and the light made by God was the temporary one. Okay? All right? What else? My nafkamina, like what's the difference between the two, and what do we learn from it? What is the purpose of each of them? Let's talk about that. What is the purpose of the menorah in the tabernacle? Let's start with that. Anybody know? Which, by the way, is different than the Ner Tamid, right? The Ner Tamid is a different light. Some argue it's the same one, but most people say it's a different light. What's the purpose of it, Jack?
Well, the one over the tabernacle, the fire, was used to tell the people when to go and to go on their journey.
Yeah.
And the other one is just part of the permanence.
So there was messaging, a different messaging between them, right? The pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night, actually, one of its purposes was to tell people when to move, right? It got up, it moved, you sort of follow it, whereas the one inside the tabernacle, right, what was its purpose?
I think it really was to illuminate what was in there, to provide
Yeah.
And then the middle one is Shabbat. And then around, like you said, this is probably a little more stylized, but the 7 branches in all for the 7 days of the week.
Yes. So the 7 branches.
It was like a calendar where
Yes.
we with our original ways.
Yes. So it was our weekly calendar, so to speak. You would light a different branch for each of the days, so that if today is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you would always be able to look inside and say, oh, today is Tuesday, today is Friday, we better get ready for Shabbat, right? So we would have that there, okay? Tom?
To see the light of the menorah, you have to be in front of it, right? But with the fire, everybody can see it.
Oh, interesting. I like that, Tom. Right? To see the light of the menorah, you actually have to go inside the tabernacle. Right? It wasn't something, even though it was something that was done by human beings, it wasn't something that actually was seen by most people. Right? It was seen by the Kohanim, maybe even just the high priest, right? But it was certainly seen by the Kohanim, maybe the Leviim, right? Who worked on it and who polished it and who did the things that they needed to do. But otherwise, it wasn't seen by the general population, whereas the pillar of fire was something that everybody saw.
In some way, it brought comfort to the people. It was otherworldly, and it kind of added spirituality.
Are you talking about the pillar of fire? Yes. Yeah, it brought comfort I like that. It brought comfort to the people because it was this other way. It wasn't something that we did, right? I mean, this is nice. We can turn it on. We can look at it. But, if a pillar of fire, well, hopefully not a pillar of fire, would land right here, it would certainly be a lot more monumental in our life to be able to say, this is otherworldly. This is something not that we did. This is something that God did. That is true. I mean, it does say umare esh, which is a very interesting way of framing it. It didn't just say that it was fire, but it looked like fire. Which, by the way, interesting, harkens back to what else looked like fire but wasn't. Act like fire. The burning bush. Right? The burning bush. So in all likelihood, one could argue, and there are a number of rabbis in the Midrash who do, this was the same fire as the burning bush. It just presented itself in a different way. For Moshe, it was a singular audience, so to speak, right? It didn't need the majesty of a full pillar of all of this. But for the people, it needed to be bigger. It needed to be more grandiose. So I want us to think about these two as different ways that we engage with the presence of God, right? Different ways that we engage with the presence of God and different ways that we expect to engage with the presence of God, okay? We like to think about, well, if we're going to engage with the presence of God, it's going to be like this pillar of fire. It's going to be a burning bush. I mean, that's God, right? That's how we know that God is there. And yet, it's not even the first piece of this. And as Jack said, and I think it's so important, it's temporary. That was there for a reason. It was there for a reason. And we're going to get back to that in a second. As opposed to the light of the menorah, which was something that not only we did, but it was something that was constant. It was something that represented a permanence of the relationship with God. And I think, let's take it away from theology for a moment, right? Let's just talk about any relationship that we may have with a friend, with a partner, right? If all we do is look for those moments that person is there for us, right, shows us that we are there, that relationship isn't going to last very long. Now, we need to know that. There are times in our life that we need to know that very importantly, right? But it's not, it's a temporary thing. It's for this moment, you need that feeling of presence. But a relationship really is something that goes both ways. It's something that we have to be involved in. We have to nurture. We have to stoke that fire. We have to make sure that everything is ready. All of those things have to happen. And so as we look at this and we think about how do we as human beings relate to God, we wait in our life, I think, for these moments that are those magical moments. I'm going to Israel, right, next week. And for many of us, we feel that magical moment when we're in the land of Israel. We feel that connection, right? And yet, what happens when we come back? For those who have, say it again? We say Birkat HaGomel, especially if we fly halal. But it's the same question that Rabbi Ern and I have discussed for many, many years with people vis-a-vis summer camp, right? We go to summer camp and we have this amazing experience because, frankly, at summer camp, it's the pillar of fire, right? Everything is being done for you. Everything is set up in such a way that at every moment you're feeling the presence of that Yiddishkeit and the connection to community. It's built in that way. And then when you come back from summer camp and you come back to your school and your synagogues and your places that are around, you go, why wasn't it like that? And the reality is, because this place is the menorah, not the pillar. This place is what we do, how we engage, how we connect ourselves. And it's a very, I think, powerful understanding of different ways that we, as human beings, connect to the world around us and teaches us, reminds us of the need for us to be involved, because the pillar of fire is only temporary. And it leaves. Because when that moment is over, now what happens? Neil.
For me, I want to go back immediately. Right?
Correct?
I want to go back, so maybe that's the flame that draws us back all the time.
Well, perhaps it's the reminder, right? It's the reminder of what that pillar of fire was through the fire that we create, right? And it's smaller and it's more contained and it's not as majestic and it's not miraculous in the same way, but it's there. It's a part of who we are and it's a part of our life. Any other comments before I close?
I think fire also, it's one of the four elements, right? We have earth, wind, fire, and water. And they all sort of go together, and you can't have like just all of one all the time, or everything will burn up. If you have just water all the time, everything will flood. And certainly in San Diego, fire is no stranger to us, unfortunately. So I think it's also, when we talk about it, it's to a certain degree, it's about balancing that fire as well and using it as any element for good, using it for mitzvot. Like
Fire can be destructive.
Right, we bless the candle, have like Ner Shel Shabbat, and tonight we have Havdalah. We have there's so many beautiful fires and flames in Judaism that if we just take the time to really lean in, don't burn yourself, but to really use those fires for what we need, a yortzeit candle.
So good. So
I can think of a gazillion.
So that leads me to sort of where I wanna close is, I think there's actually, the reason they're both in this parsha is there's a connection, right? Fire by itself, as you were starting to say, fire by itself is dangerous. We know that in Southern California, right? Fire that gets out of control, fire that we ignore, or we feel that it's, we don't have to worry about it. that's the fire that burns us, and if we're not careful. And yet, we're able to take that incredibly powerful, incredibly wild thing and be able to focus it, to be able to harness it. And it's, to some degree, it's about presence versus action, right? It's about presence versus action. And there are two ways that we relate to the people around us, and God relates with us, right? Through presence and through action. The pillar of fire is the presence of God. And presence by itself, presence in and of itself can be very, very powerful. Rabbi Dahlin understands this. For those of us who have been chaplains and hospital chaplains, we talk about it very often as a ministry of presence, right? We go, we are with somebody at all sorts of moments, happy moments, sad moments. Just being alone, just being alone is overwhelming. Being with somebody can make a difference. But in and of itself, it's also not enough. It needs to be followed up with what happens after that. How do we actually take the warmth from that presence and bring it into our life in a way that now we can utilize that? As I mentioned, I'm going to Israel, and for in a very real way, we're going because we just want to be present, right? We want to be able to give hugs. We want to be able to let the people that we know there, our family, our friends, know that they're not alone. But that's also not quite enough, right? We need both fires. We need not only the pillar of fire, which is temporary because, frankly, we're going to leave, right? We're going to leave after that. So what do we do? How do we also find a way to leave those little flames, those little lights? Well, that's what we're going to be focusing on while we're there. We're going to be focusing on engaging with the people that are there, helping to do some rebuilding, helping to feed people that need to be fed, all of those sorts of things. And we have to think about it in both ways, not just in Israel, but here in our communities as well. And so on this Shabbat BeHalotkha, I ask you to think about those two different types of flames and think in your own life, how can you both be the flame of the pillar of fire that, while it may be temporary, is so important because it shows presence, and also the flame of the menorah that takes effort and takes thought and takes coordination and takes a little bit of work to make sure that that happens each and every day and continues. Otherwise, that flame will go out. Shabbat Shalom.